Sergeant Maverick, the podcast, episode 2, Gilligan's Island, take 1.
Nice touch.
I thought you might like that. Welcome back, everybody, to Sergeant Maverick, the podcast, where we talk about all things police work, politics, and life. I'm your host, Sergeant Maverick. Today, one of my best good friends is our guest, hence the title of the episode, Gilligan's Island. Tom Gilligan, Sergeant Tom Gilligan, retired Metro-Dade Police. Welcome, Tom.
How you doing, Bert?
Good. I'm glad you're here.
Good to be here.
A little history. Tom and I met at our Intracoastal station in 2010 when I asked for a transfer out of the dungeon and crime scene at headquarters, and I ended up in Intracoastal. And Tom was a uniformed sergeant, and I was a uniformed sergeant, and we landed on the same platoon, and then the kind of rest is history.
You took off right from there.
Yeah. So we're going to get into Tom's background. We're going, like I said in the title, it's all things police work, politics, and life. So we're going to cover Tom's background because it's a little different than the rest of us that work for Metro-Dade Police or Miami-Dade Police or now Miami-Dade Sheriff's Office for the first time since 1958. We have an elected sheriff in Miami-Dade County along with the rest of the state of Florida. So things are a little different there, but for those of you that don't know, when we were Metro-Dade Police or Miami-Dade Police, we were still the sheriff of Miami-Dade County. We're all deputies. We just didn't call ourselves that.
Our card said we were deputies.
Yeah, exactly. And our badge, if you can see my retirement trophy, you can see the sheriff's star inside the badge. So Tom is a little bit different than the rest of us because he was with NYPD first. Tom's from New York. I grew up in New York. So we have a lot of things in common there, like the New York Yankees.
Or the Mets.
Or no, never the Mets.
I was never a Yankee fan.
There you go. And Joe Namath.
Joe Willie.
So we're going to get into Tom's background, and then we're going to get into some other aspects of our jobs as sergeants and supervision. And then we're going to hit the politics as far as law enforcement is concerned, with everything that's happening in the news, especially surrounding his old stomping ground, New York, when everything happening there. It seems like to be ground zero for things that take off first, especially that affects law enforcement. So anyway. Once again, welcome, Tom. So, you're from New York. You grew up there. Where were you born?
I was born in Brooklyn, and we stayed there. My mom and dad had an apartment first, and moved to several apartments until mom and dad finally bought a house in '74 in Queens, where I did the majority of my maturity.
Do you remember how much that house cost in '74?
I think somewhere in the neighborhood like $33,000 back in 1974.
Yeah. A lot different now. What's that house worth now?
Well, when Mom passed, we sold it for close to $500,000.
Yeah.
In very poor condition on top of that.
Right. Okay, so you're a New York boy. Where'd you go to school? Things like that.
Well, we always, we started off me and my brother, we went to Catholic grammar school. I've both finished Catholic grammar school. I went to public high school, good old Franklin K. Lane, right on the border of Brooklyn and Queens. Half of the school was in Brooklyn, half of the school was in Queens. Right down the middle of the front doors. So you got the best and the worst of Brooklyn and Queens.
Sounds like some addresses that we respond to where half the address is on our side and half is on the city of Miami side or something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah. What's your family background? Because when you and I met, I had never met anybody named Gilligan.
That's right? An Irish name. Dad was Irish, Mom was Italian, which was a typical Northeast combination.
Yeah. Irish, Italian, Polish, German.
All came over through Ellis Island.
Yeah. Is that where your grandparents came through?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so typical immigrant story from the early 1900s, early 20th century. Okay. What was your favorite thing about growing up in New York? Because obviously growing up in New York City is different than growing up in Miami and a lot of other places.
Well, in the neighborhood I grew up in, there were a lot of kids, so we always had the freedom of being outside, not having to worry so much about the things we have to worry about today. About parents didn't really worry about if we ever came back home. We would hop from house to house, and all the parents knew us, and we would eat dinner there, come back and eat dinner at my house.
Right.
And everybody pretty much, knew where we were, what we were doing, knew all the kids, and had met the parents, and so we never had to worry about something was going to happen. And if something did happen, you'd have about 6 kids on top of you.
Yeah, my upbringing was similar. Even I lived in Queens as a little boy. My brother was born when I was 2 years old, and then we moved to Westchester County, just north of New York City, where my sister was born in White Plains, and then up to Brewster, which is about 55 miles north of New York City, and it's a more rural area. But even though it was all houses, the upbringing was exactly the same. We were always at somebody else's house. We were always having dinner at somebody's house. Or, I'd tell my mother at the last minute, Tommy's staying. My best friend growing up was Tommy as well, right? Tommy's staying for dinner and vice versa. There is something you and I have. We have a lot of things in common because of where we grew up. But the sport that we all played, and I played in Westchester when I was a little boy because we all played it. It was stickball, right? I don't know if that was done down here. Like I said, I didn't grow up here, but that was something, a New York thing, a New Jersey thing. Maybe it was a Chicago thing. I don't know.
We always had a blast. We were playing stickball or we were playing softball in an abandoned schoolyard that we turned into a baseball field. Simple things.
Yeah.
And they were fun. Yeah. I mean,
Right.
you can go up to the variety store and buy a couple of sponge balls or Spalding balls for under $2, and somebody went and got their mom's broomstick or a cut down stick, and
Right.
and the game was on.
Yeah. It was a lot of fun. We also took that same ball. We played a lot of handball.
Loved handball.
Yeah, it was great.
And then handball turned into paddleball, which
Yeah.
seems like it's a dead art these days.
Well, as you know, I'm a tennis player, but now pickleball has burst on the scene, and it's like a giant wiffle ball, a bigger wiffle ball, and a lot of people are playing it. I'm going to sound a little snotty here for a second and say, I get asked all the time, do you play pickleball? I said, no, I play tennis. Oh, would you play pickleball? I said, maybe, but real tennis players don't play pickleball.
It'd be very slowed down for you.
But I can see it. It's a lot of fun. You're at the net. You're playing doubles. It's very social, just like tennis doubles is very social. I just, I jokingly say that, of course, because any activity you do is good, no matter what it is, right? So,
especially at our age.
Siblings. You mentioned one, I think.
Yeah, I have a younger brother, professor out in California.
His name?
James.
James. So he's out in California. What? All right, so you were with NYPD before you came to us.
Yes.
Okay. Were you married before you became a cop or after?
After.
Okay.
I got married the first time in '85.
Okay.
And I'd already been an officer a little bit more than a year.
And how many children do you have?
3 told, 2 with my first wife and 1 with my current wife.
Hopefully your last one.
My last one.
Yeah. All right, so we touched on that you were with NYPD first. So let's go to the genesis of that. What made you decide you wanted to be a cop?
Well, since the '70s, when I saw officers interact, unfortunately, mom and dad didn't always get along, so cops got called every now and then. But
For your house?
to my house,
Okay.
yeah, not every romance is roses. And just they did the right thing by us, and me, my brother, and my mom, and Dad needed to be taken away. He was taken away. Not arrested, but he had to leave for the night, like we used to do.
Yeah, like we used to do.
So, at a young age, that stood out in my mind. It's like, yeah, I want to do that. I want to help people. So, I didn't turn out actively pursuing becoming a cop. It kind of just fell into my lap because I was working on Wall Street, and then I wanted a better way of life. So, a friend of my brother's, and it turned out to be a friend of mine, his dad was a bus driver. So I spoke with him and about the benefits and having a city job, and it was all secured, and you get benefits, retirement, and it all looked good. So he suggested I get a magazine that had all the city listings for all the open city jobs coming. So I'm looking for the bus driver, and boom, there it is. New York City police officer opening. So the written test was coming up, and they gave you the guidelines you had to apply, and they give you a date. So now you have to do the study and to take the test. So
What year was that?
82. The written test that for when I got hired was December of 82. I got I got a 96, and it was like a lottery system. You got thrown into bands. There were 3 bands. Band 1, Band 2, Band 3. It's just where you landed, no matter, if you got a good score. I happened to be picked in Band 1, so I was sent along the training, the physical, the medical, all of that good stuff. You have to go to the police academy and pass a couple of simple skills. Can you make it over a 5-foot wall? Can you drag a dummy? So I made it, and January 4th of 1984, I raised the right hand and swore I would. And that's where it all started.
Is that when you entered the academy or when you graduated?
When I entered the academy.
Okay.
That was day 1.
Okay. I'm going to go back for a second, and then we'll get into the academy. So you mentioned Wall Street. So were you the Wolf of Wall Street?
No. Nothing glorified like that. It was all back office stuff. After graduating high school, I gave college like about a month. And a buddy of mine who had graduated high school a year 4, he was working for a company called Payne Webber. And he got me in there. And I worked for Payne Webber for a couple of years. And then I worked for Dean Witter for the remainder until I started the academy.
Those are some big names.
Back then they were, yeah.
Yeah. So did you get to see, like what we see on TV? You see the New York Stock Exchange and all that and the trading going on the floor. Did you ever get to see any of that stuff?
Never went to the floor, never saw any of that. It was all, like I said, the back office stuff, the paper aspect of all of that you see on TV.
Right. So they did all that stuff, and then you had to file it all or organize it all.
Yeah, all the, you dot the I's, cross the T's, all the paperwork part of all those trades, got filtered down to, what trades were going out, what trades were coming in, and of course you had to balance by the end of the night and account for all the trades going in and out. That's basically what I did.
Okay. So now in the academy, the NYPD Academy, what was that like? And we'll talk about our academy, because you had to go through our academy again, right?
Yes, I did.
Okay, so what was the NYPD Academy, and how long was it?
It was 6 months. It was January to June. Gun and Shield Day being in June. That's when we all graduated. You had to take. You could drive your car there, but good luck trying to find a parking spot and make it on time for the academy. So most of us took mass transportation. And that I was still living at home, so that meant getting myself up early, taking a train into Manhattan, making sure that we were in the academy on time, of course, because a brand new cadet, you can't be late. And you had 8 hours, and that included learning police science, learning how to deal with people, laws, and of course the physical aspect.
Right. Can you make some comparisons to our academy? Are they similar? Was there anything really different about it?
Well, for me, going through our academy, I'd already been a cop for 7 years. So for me, it was just learning a new system, the new laws, how to write the report. Right. Because a robbery is a robbery. It's just, it's the same. It's just, the statute is different in New York City than it is here.
Was the NYPD Academy physically demanding?
Well, of course, we did the calisthenics parts and we did the running part, but, one day was self-defense. Another day was learning how to fall, how to box.
Yeah.
So, for the first time in a lot of people's lives, they got hit in the face.
First time got punched in the mouth.
First time we got punched in the mouth. And for a lot of people, the first time they actually hit somebody.
Yeah.
Now, I played football in high school, so I was used to getting hit. Maybe not so much in the mouth because I had a helmet on, but
Right.
the physical aspect part of it wasn't so hard for me.
So now you graduate. Let's talk about your graduation.
Well,
You have a photo.
I brought the Daily News, and I hand wrote June 5th of '84. And in that sea of blue and white gloves, I'm in there somewhere. 1,600 of us graduated that day. And it says here, almost 1,300 from city, a little bit more than 200 from transit, and the remainder were housing, because back then it wasn't one big happy family.
Right.
It's either you were city, you were transit cop, or you were a housing cop.
Right.
And from the people that graduated, from the people who scored higher, transit and housing picked first, and everybody else then became city. So I was lucky enough that the actually higher scores got picked by housing and transit, and then when they finally got down to me, I became a city officer.
That sounds counterintuitive, that the higher scores would get picked by housing and transit.
Well, look at it as the draft. The team that has the worst record gets to go first, and in this case, the entities with the least amount of people.
Okay, that makes sense then, because in the hierarchy or the food chain of policing, the city cops are here, and then you got housing and transit, and I hate to say it that way, but it's true, right? For the transit cops, did that include Port Authority?
No, Port Authority was totally
Something different. They go through the academy with you, or they had their own?
No, they had their own. The only ones were housing, transit, and
Okay.
city in our academy.
When did they all merge?
Oh, that was after I left, so it'd have to be after 90. After
Okay.
90.
On our way back from New York in November, we went back for my high school teammate as a coach, and they won the state championship. We surprised them and went to see him win the state championship. Soccer. When we came back to JFK, I declared my weapon at the counter, and you would think that, I fired a shot at Trump, right?
New York City's not a gun state. Well, New
Not
York
at
State
all.
is not a gun state.
The young lady behind the counter, I saw, the
The wheels are turning.
The wheels are turning, and she didn't know what to do. And then the older veteran lady came and she goes, "I got this." And they called the police, right? So as a Port Authority officer, they came over and they needed to see my credentials. And for those of you that may not know, that in 2004, President Bush signed the Law Enforcement Officer Safety Act, meaning that we can carry our weapons anywhere in the United States. Not on board. The plane itself has to be checked in baggage, but in case you didn't know this, for any of you cops out there and you travel, I would recommend taking your gun with you, okay? Because you never know, right? You never know when you're going to be in that spot and an active shooter pops off or something like that. And then you can't do anything about it except become a victim.
Even if it's just to defend yourself and your family.
Well, that's what it's for, is to defend yourself. It's not to go and kick down a door and take action. It's to be able to defend yourself against one of these animals out there. But anyway, he had to check my credentials, and he was very nice. I asked him, so, we're allowed to carry? He goes, "No, I just need to check your credentials because we have the strictest gun laws in the country." I said, "Okay, I got that." And then after that, "So how long you been with Miami-Dade?" And, all this and that. No, the questions started. And then I talked to a TSA guy, and he was full of questions too. And we had, while we were waiting for a TSA supervisor to come that had to sign off on it, they checked my weapon, in my bag and everything. But we're just shooting the shit together and having a good old time. And, and they were asking about how we are at Miami-Dade, how we do things down here, because every department is a bit different. All right, so now you graduated. You're on the road. What was your first day like on the road?
Well, went to, it's called NSU, which was called the Neighborhood Stabilization Unit, and basically it was an extension of the academy. And that's where you were told, forget everything you learned in the academy, we're going to teach you how to do it the right way.
I hate that saying. I hate that saying. You know, and as an FTO, I never said that to my rookies.
Yeah. Well, we had, we didn't have to have so much, our FTOs were fourth grade detectives. So, and we had 2 of them for the 20 of us in our NSU, and I was NSU, I want to say 4, which was, it covered Central Park, the 20th Precinct, the 23rd Precinct, the 25th Precinct, and a little bit of Harlem. And there was always a detail where a couple of officers went to Harlem for the day. But basically you walked with another officer, and you learned. And if you weren't lucky enough to get in an RMP, you know, a marked unit then, because there was just 2 officers and the training officer.
Tell our folks what an RMP means. 'Cause
Radio Motor Patrol, as opposed to a PPV.
patrol vehicle.
Patrol vehicle.
Yeah.
So, you know, you got to walk a lot on foot, and your posts were about, you know, 4 streets long and both sides of the street. And you pretty much got to see what happened day in, day out. You got to interact with people for the first time in your life wearing a uniform. So it was a little different. People looked at you very different, and you were there to do a different job. You know, never, ever had to, you know, help somebody who was bleeding before, or, you know, babysit a dead body. No, that was kind of a new situation.
You graduated in June.
Correct.
Okay. So it's summertime in New York, right?
Nice and hot.
Nice and hot. When you graduated as a rookie, like they do in LA, the rookies have to wear long sleeve and tie when they're on riding assignments. Did you have to do that, or did you wear the short sleeve?
It all depends on the time of the year and what the approved uniform was at the time. So every year you had to wait for the written memo to change uniforms from winter uniform to summer uniform. Winter uniform was the long sleeves and the tie, and the summer uniform was a short sleeve shirt. So depends, and sometimes that order didn't come out until like the middle of July,
Right.
even though you're sweating your rear end off in long sleeves.
Back then, you had the classic light blue shirt.
Yes.
Okay. When did they transition to all navy blue?
Again, that was after I left.
After you left. So the whole time you were in that light blue shirt that we see on the Law and Order episode,
That's
you know, at the
correct.
beginning of every episode, right?
Yep. Every set of my days off, I would be ironing my shirts and my pants, you know, 5 sets to bring to the station, you know, the first day of the shift. And, you know, you kept them all there because we got changed at the station.
Something that we don't do here.
Correct.
You weren't allowed to wear a uniform to and from.
Right, correct. You could not be in a personal car and in uniform. If you wanted to be in uniform, you had to take mass transportation like we had to go into the academy.
Okay, so because that gave visibility on the trains.
Correct. Even though you were wearing, you know, a cadet uniform, and you're carrying a big book bag with all your books in it, and your whatever you were going to use for the day, your gym uniform. Yeah.
So basically, you guys were, you know, you were the police Cub Scouts, as we were.
Pretty
in the
much,
academy,
yes.
Right? Did you go to the academy in your cadet uniform?
Yes. I left Mom's house in my uniform every day, got on the trains, and went into
And
downtown
it
Manhattan.
says New York City Police Academy, whatever?
Yep.
Okay. How did you feel about not being armed and traveling in uniform?
I didn't think anything of it at the time. Today, I look back and go, oh, my God. Because if something happened on that train,
Exactly.
everybody would have looked at what looked like the cop.
And you would be like that cop in Die Hard in the New York City subway with Samuel Jackson, where he's on the phone, right? And he, stop, don't move, right?
Didn't even have that. Part of the equipment that they gave us that we had to buy, as a matter of fact, was a little billet, a black billet, that I only just got rid of recently. And that was in the bag every day, in the book bag every day. Me and my little, that was the only weapon I had. No nightstick, no firearm, no nothing other than that.
Okay.
No handcuffs, none of that.
So now you're on the neighborhood.
Neighborhood Stabilization Unit is what
Okay,
it's
as a
called.
rookie,
It's
as a
basically an extension of the academy on-the-job training unit.
And you're on foot patrol?
Yep.
Okay. Which the big metropolitan cities still have to some extent, right? I mean, city of Miami, because they have the downtown area, they have, some officers out on foot, usually on bicycle now because it's easier to get around. But, for us in the county, Miami-Dade, you can't do that. It doesn't exist. You have to be in a car, which replaced the horse since we were the sheriff, right? And everything was spread out. Okay, so how long were you on foot posts at that time?
Well, to graduate NSU, you had to have 20 shifts in a car. So basically, you were trained enough with the FTO. That went on for 6 months. During that time was a hotel strike in New York, so we got a lot of time in front of hotels, pretty much just keep the peace. The workers from the people going in, the ones across the picket line, making sure everybody behaved themselves. A lot of overtime was made also.
Yeah. Do you remember what your salary was back then?
I want to say my starting salary was $21,800 back in January of '84.
In February of '83, when I started the Metro-Dade Academy, at Miami-Dade College, where we used to go, my father had done a calculation from my previous job to the academy, and I got a 60% pay increase, meaning I wasn't making crap before, and my salary was $18,600 in the academy in 1983. Can you imagine that?
Not today.
Right? So then when we graduate, of course, your salary goes up a little bit, and now you're on the road, and you're going to get overtime and court and all that kind of stuff. So we were pretty much the same at that point.
At different parts of the world.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, New York City is New York City, right? It's our greatest, biggest city in the United States. Everything kind of centers around that. It's the focal point for the U.S., and of course, it is the financial center of the world, right? New York City, Wall Street. So I think since New York was the first municipal police department back in the mid-1800s, everybody took their cues from that on how to form a city policing department. And, of course, you got sheriffs and marshals, town marshals and county sheriffs going way back. But you don't have the concentration of people in the Old West that you did in the cities at that time. And New York was the first one. And then, and then Chicago and then Philadelphia and all that. When did you get to drive the car for the first time?
When it was my turn to be in the car with the training officer. And that was totally different too. I mean, I got my driver's license at 17, and now I'm driving a police car at 21 years old.
Right.
And you get to do a lot of things in a police car that you don't get to do in a personal car.
Oh yeah.
So, and you, of course, along with our training in academy, you have to pass your driving test too.
Right.
So, yeah, I got to go down one-way streets the wrong way, and use.
And New York City is full of one-way streets.
Oh.
It's the only way traffic can navigate, right? You can only manage traffic. Everybody's going in the same direction, even though it's terrible. At least you're still going in the same direction.
And the streets are nowhere near as wide as they are here. Right. And then for the most part, you have cars parked on both sides and just not a whole lot more room than the car itself, and maybe 3 feet on each side.
Well, New York City was built during the time of the horse and carriage.
And the streets are very narrow.
Right? Kind of like Europe. So to get bigger, and then when this building started going up, that just took up all that space. What was the name of your first FTO?
I can't remember. His nickname was Mo. Because he was called, we would go out with Mo in the telephone truck. Mo, even though he was the training officer, was on the phone with his girlfriend like 7 out of the 8 hours. So, pretty much we taught ourselves, and it's just, don't kill nobody.
Right. How many FTOs did you have?
Just two. Just the two that were assigned to the NSU, and we had them for the entire 6 months.
Okay.
And those are the two that we got the 20 shifts in the car with.
Now you're out of training assignments. You're
On to our first precinct.
full-fledged cop.
Yep.
What was your first precinct?
My first assignment was at 32nd Precinct in
Where?
Harlem.
In Harlem.
I asked to go there.
Okay. Why?
If I'm going to be a cop, actually, I asked to go to Upper New York, where it's 32nd to 30th Precinct, 34th Precinct. That's for your higher crime areas. That's where you're going to learn how to be a cop.
Right. How many precincts at that time did New York City have?
I couldn't tell you exactly the number, but there was in Manhattan alone, there were a whole lot of them.
Yeah.
Starting at the low numbers at the tip of Manhattan, at the bottom, go up all the way up to the 34th Precinct, which is in the north tip. And then on top of precincts, you had Manhattan North, Manhattan South. There were quite a few.
Right. How was your first assignment on your own? Do you remember the day that you were on your own for the first time? But you guys were partnered up, right?
Well, actually, the first few times out of the 32nd Precinct, I had a flip post. What a shock, walking around, he's born in Brooklyn, Queens, worked on Wall Street, and now I'm walking a foot post in Harlem. It's a little bit of a change.
Right.
So, and not everybody liked seeing us, and some people love seeing us. But that's where you gave out parking tickets. You kind of had to justify your time and make 8 hours go by.
Those of us that did or do policing in Florida or more expansive areas, like LA County, very similar to Miami-Dade County. It's spread out, so you got to be in a car and all that. We have districts, police districts that are huge, right? But what are the size of the precincts in New York City?
The 32nd Precinct was about 6th Avenue wide and about 9/10 of a mile long. And it was hopping.
And how many cops did you have in the precinct?
About 200.
Okay.
For all of that. And this was all apartment buildings.
Yeah.
Not your single family homes that you would find out on Long Island and Queens.
Right.
It's all 30, 40, 50-story apartment buildings.
Most of Manhattan's like that. It's tall, it's high rises. And
a lot of the businesses weren't in Harlem. That's where most was residential. I mean, you had your businesses on the main avenues, but not like the Wall Street area.
Right. Yeah, it's different. A different type of policing. It's a different environment. Having not grown up in the city in my formative years, but having been to the city many, many times. My father worked for General Electric in Manhattan. And we had friends in the city and we went there all the time. But I didn't, after we moved out when I was a couple years old, never stayed in a city. But when you go in, it's a different vibe, right? You can feel the power of the city, the tall buildings and everything. And you're amazed if you've never seen, tall buildings like that.
It can be overwhelming.
Yeah. Okay. We're gonna get into some of the things that you did in NYPD, and then we're gonna talk about your story. So, folks, we're gonna take a hard break here for a few minutes, and we'll be right back with Gilligan's Island. Welcome back, everyone. We're with Sergeant Tom Gilligan, one of my very close friends. So we were talking about, your time in New York. So let's finish up with that. The precincts are small compared to our districts, like in a wider county or patrol area.
Well, they vary also, because my first assignment in Manhattan, then my second assignment that I transferred out to Queens, went from 9/10 of a mile long and 6 avenues wide to 16 square miles, which is Queens, which is a nice big Queens.
Because Queens is more spread out. Mm-hmm. You've got the single family homes there and
businesses.
Yeah. So the epicenter of the city is where it all started, and they built up, and then as it grew outwards, They were able to spread out more room. What was, when you're comparing it, and we're going to get into you coming over to Metro. I remember once you telling me you really didn't do a lot of perimeters and stuff like we
Nope.
do here.
Not at all. Not at all. There's just too many people and not enough cops. Now, I never even heard of a perimeter until I got here.
Really? So a bad guy goes running on foot. What do you do?
You're after the rabbit. That's it. Either you
Right,
catch
so-
them or you don't.
Okay, so I guess maybe that's the impetus why you always see in a New York-based cop show or movie, everybody's in a foot chase. I mean, of course, we do foot chases here, but we learned over the years, let's set up a box, let the rabbit do the running, and get the dogs after him in the helicopter.
Let the rabbit run until he's tired.
Right. The difference is with the helicopter here, we're not running into tall buildings. Even though New York NYPD has many helicopters, it's not helicopter patrol per se.
When we get to my story, I'll mention about a
Yeah.
helicopter.
Okay. Cool. So, what were some of the other differences? The style of policing that you did there. I mean, you obviously still responded to domestics and things like that.
Well, you always work well when you got into a car, when you got into a steady car, and you asked earlier because I got assigned to 3-2 in January of '85, and for the first January, February, March, the 3 coldest months of the year in New York City, that's I had a foot post, and then when finally a car opened up because people either transferred or retired, whatever the case may be, you had to request to ride 2-man. And get an open car if one was available. So March, April is when I partnered up with my first partner named Richie Gleave, and we got a sector. We got a steady sector car for when we worked. So, and from foot post to now you got your 2-man unit handling calls. Very different, very different. And you got to rely on each other. And, you're going into some stuff and being brand new officers and, you're still only 3 months of actually being in the new precinct and learning your way around and learning names and faces. And, it was an eye-opener.
Let's talk briefly about the equipment that you had. When I came on, we had revolvers as same as you, but we had the Rogers break front holsters that at least kept the gun tight on your hip. It didn't flop around. Did you guys have the looser holsters?
Yes, we did. It went on your belt, and it was a holster that came down a little bit. It was a swivel holster is what we called it. And the only locking mechanism was a piece of leather that you had to put the gun in and twist it. And what would happen is the piece of leather would hold the cylinder from coming up. And the only way the way to get around that is you had to put your thumb down in there and twist and then pull it out. Bad guys knew that too.
They practice it in prison. Know how to take the guns out of the holsters.
But it was great. It was comfort for the car. You could always slide it over and have the gun sit right here while you're driving or you're in the passenger seat. Right. So unlike, with us here, it's not always stuck right there, so you couldn't move it.
At that time, speed loaders or dump pouches?
First issued dump pouches, which you would carry an extra 6 or 7. Actually, you carry usually 7 because 6 would make too much noise. It would rattle around. So if you're trying to sneak up on somebody, that's not the best thing. But right. Then there was a situation, an officer got killed out in Rockaway because he did not reload quick enough. And the subject of a burglary had a semi-auto. So from his death, we went on to speed loaders. And so then instead of 2 dump pouches, you had 2 speed loaders.
It always takes a tragedy to make us change.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. We had speed loaders right from the beginning. There was a time before me, and I came on in '83, so we're going back to the 70s now when there was dump pouches. And the cross-draw holster, which FHP, when I came on, was still wearing it. They carried 357s, we carried 38s, but they were wearing the cross-draw holster. And we came to learn during our academy training, and then after, some of the guys that have been on quite a few years that started in the 70s or even in the 60s. The cross-draw holster they called the Widowmaker. because it basically just let the bad guy pull it straight out and hold the gun, and he's right here.
If they got close enough, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Body armor. Did you guys have issued body armor then?
Issued body armor level 1, the thinnest that they can give us. The PBA, they bought those for us.
Least expensive.
The least expensive. At least it would stop a 38 and maybe a 22 rifle round. That was about it.
But as you learn, the body armor is supposed to be designed to stop the caliber that you're carrying, right? For the very reason that when you graduated, 50% of all cops in the country were killed with their own gun. Or at the very least, shot with their own gun because the subject got it away from them. So I got level 3 right from the beginning, or 2A, whatever it was. It was a little bit higher, and it would stop what we carried plus 12 gauge. Now, of course, you get hit with a 12 gauge round, no matter what. The double-aught buck, you're going down.
Yeah, you're going.
Hopefully, it doesn't go through, but you're going to break some ribs or something. So, but because it was the least expensive option, because you guys had how many cops you had to pay for?
When I left, Swan was 30,000 plus.
30,000. Now they're over 35, 37, somewhere in that neighborhood. When they combined everybody together.
One big happy family?
Well, I always like to call our departments, and I don't care what department you work for, we're more like a Jerry Springer family.
Dysfunctional.
Right? We're dysfunctional, a lot of the time or some of the time, and we'll fight with everybody else, but you can't fight with us. Or we'll fight amongst ourselves, but you can't fight with us.
Exactly.
Right. So you cross that line when you come after any one of us. At least that's the way it should be, right? We got to protect our own.
Make sure you go home at the end of the day.
Talk about the arresting process you guys had in New York as opposed to the way we do it here.
Now, from what I remember, it was a long, drawn-out process. You and your partner got to the station. You had to go in front of the desk lieutenant, tell him who you had, what you had. And then
you're walking in with the perp, as you guys called them, right? Handcuffed. And you take him to the desk.
Straight to the front desk, and you spoke to usually a lieutenant, who would be the desk officer for the commander for the night. And you got to give him all the pertinent stuff, name, birthday.
You call him shift commander, watch commander?
It's just a desk officer.
But it was a lieutenant.
Okay. Yeah. Usually it was a lieutenant, or if the lieutenant had to take a break or wasn't there for the night, it was one of the road sergeants would get pulled to work the desk. So you had the desk off supervisor, and then you had somebody on the telephone switchboard that would answer the phones.
So you have a desk lieutenant that you have to bring your prisoner to upon arriving at the station or the precinct.
Couldn't go anywhere or do anything else until you stopped at the front desk.
Okay, so I'm gonna throw some of ours under the bus a little bit here. Try to find one of ours a lot of the time. Right?
Pretty much.
Right. I mean, if we had to do that all the time, can you have the lieutenant? I got a prisoner. I'm glad we didn't do stuff like that. So go on.
So then you and your partner started the arrest process, and you had 2 hours to be from the time you walked in to the time you needed to depart, unless you had think of an involved case. So one of us would fingerprint, the other one would start the reports, and then whatever property needed to be impounded. Whoever was doing the reports also did the arrest report, which was a long piece of paper way back then, and you had the 2 hours.
2 hours to do all that.
2 hours to do all that. Sometimes it was nice and simple. Like if it was a petty theft, shoplifting from you, it's a simple OI or a report and a simple arrest form. But we also had to fingerprint all our prisoners, which we didn't do here.
We did for felonies, depending on what it was. But the problem for us, as you came to find out, we had to fingerprint all our own juveniles, which was a major pain in the ass.
So for me to fingerprint when I first got down here was a breeze because I already knew how for doing so for 6+ years. But yeah, it was a long drawn out process, and you had the desk lieutenant at an hour and a half telling you need to get out. You need to be out. Because anything and everything that happened in that station got written in the book by the lieutenant or desk officer.
So when he told you, and I'm guessing it was mostly he's at the time, right? That you need to get out. What does getting out mean?
You need to finish up and leave. That's what you need to do.
Okay, so do you leave with your prisoner or you leave him there?
No. Whoever was going to, whoever the arresting officer, if it was within your shift, your partner would find somebody else, go grab somebody from a foot post, and they would transport while you went down in your personal car. Because by the time down you got to central booking, there was another long, drawn-out process.
Central booking is known as?
Manhattan central booking.
Is that what they call the tombs?
The tombs was the holding cells. Rikers, I think it was. Okay. Yeah, where they were held, not the tombs. Anything that we had was just temporary holding.
Right.
So you started that long, drawn-out process, and you would meet them there, and you would take the prisoner in, and then you would deposit all the paperwork, and corrections would look over, make sure your arrest form was right, and then they would look over the prints. And if it didn't pass their muster, you had to reprint your prisoner until it was right. Because corrections didn't fingerprint prisoners. You had to do everything.
Really? Wow.
At least when I left, it was like that.
Yeah.
So the arrest process could be long and drawn out. Now, you also could have volunteered for prisoner escort, is when they took the van out and they picked either delivered prisoners to stations because central booking was overcrowded, or they picked up prisoners from the station and they had to come back for court purposes. And so your paperwork would get held back until you were done. So if you were looking for overtime, you would volunteer for prisoner escort.
You said that you would go down to central booking in your personal car.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
You're still on duty.
You're still on duty. Most times you're going to be there past the end of your shift. Yeah, it was almost like a given.
So you're going to get overtime, but you had to drive your personal car while you're technically on duty.
Correct.
At the
Not
time.
in uniform.
So you had to change.
Oh, yeah.
But you're still on duty.
Correct.
Wow. And then you're going to be at central booking, finishing up the paperwork, whatever you're doing, well past the end of your shift. And then from there you would go home?
From there I'd go home. But between then you would take your paperwork and you would go sit in pretty much a waiting room until the assistant state attorney would go over your packet. That's everything, whatever, if you impounded property, your reports, a copy of your arrest report, copy of your incident report, and pretty much you were discussing, okay, we're going to keep this charge and we're going to change that charge.
So they're doing a pre-file conference right then and there.
Yeah.
And for folks that are not familiar, state attorney in Florida, district attorney in New York. Same thing.
So, and then after all that was all said and done, then it went to the typing pool to where the affidavit had to be typed up. And the affidavit usually wasn't typed up correctly the first time around.
So while you're at the precinct with your prisoner, you didn't do the A form there?
The A form was written there. They're talking about the charging affidavit.
Okay, by the state or by the district attorney.
The charging affidavit, yeah.
So you had to wait while they did that.
Correct. And then it had to be proofed again by the attorney. And then if it wasn't right, it had to go back for corrections. Because, before it was finalized, they had to sign it. I had to sign it. And there were times where it was, and they were using typewriters, not computers.
Right.
And whiteout and correction tape and all that other good stuff. And then, depending upon when the shift change was, who picked up where somebody left off, words were misspelled, things like that, or the subject's name wasn't correct. You can be there anywhere between, 4 to 6 hours with just that alone, depending on how many people were in front of you.
And this process took place 24/7?
24/7.
So you had midnight DAs, ADAs that were doing this.
Yep. Maybe not as many as a day shift and afternoon shift.
Well, of course, yeah, but because generally there's some less activity at night. But so nobody was really happy having them work the midnight shift and do all this process, right? Especially if you were DA assigned to that. Now, after you did that, the charges were agreed upon and all that.
And the affidavit was finalized
Right.
by the attorney and yourself. That's pretty much you were done.
Okay.
But that could be sometimes, 4 hours, 6 hours, depending on your typist. That could be as much as 10 or 12.
Were there times in that process where you had to actually take your prisoner for arraignment?
No,
Okay.
no. That was all, once we dropped them off, we were done physically with the body.
That's a really involved
Antiquated?
process. Yeah, well, yeah, antiquated for sure. Slow, so many resources, required to do that. Okay. Now, let's go on to your decision to come here. How did you learn of Metro-Dade?
Well, first of all, the decision was made. I was married at the time. And the way the city was going with the way it was being run by the mayor at the time and what
Mayor
David Dinkins.
David Dinkins.
No, was he the commissioner? No, Dinkins was the mayor.
The one who rerouted the traffic for the U.S. Open tennis tournament. Right, the air traffic.
Yeah. And so it's not the direction that we wanted to raise our kids in. So, I started looking up and down where I could work as a police officer. Maryland State Troopers, Virginia Police Department, Miami wouldn't, you had to be a resident of the city of Miami at that time to even apply, and then Metro-Dade.
Okay. So, Metro.
Metro, yep, that was the one that I finally decided that I was going to come.
Once you applied, how involved was your process? Did they bring you down for testing? And
You have to go for the testing, then orientation, and then the physical, the medical, all of that good stuff. And as a matter of fact, my medical had even expired. And because I was told I was going to be in one academy class and then time and went, and I was going to be in another academy class and time and went, and they said I was going to be in a third academy class. And I said, listen, if you guys don't take me, I'm already more than a third of a way to retirement with New York City, coming up on 7 years. So my medical expired, so I had to come and take my medical, and then I started the academy in September of 90.
September 90. What class were you in?
137.
137. For
ELE
context,
137.
I was in 84 when it was still at Miami-Dade College, North Campus, and the numbers were sequential until we broke off and started our own police academy at our own training center, just like the city of Miami did their own. Okay, so I would say that the academy classes, and you had to go to a second one now, a second academy, right? Because the standards do not transfer from state to state.
Different state,
I
different.
love how they say on TV, one cop transfers to another state completely, a new police department, right? No,
Not
it's
reality.
all BS. Yeah,
Not reality.
right. Whole new academy.
And I had to learn forms. I had to, learn the statutes as opposed to the penal code in New York.
The Florida State
Again, like I
statutes.
said earlier, robberies are robberies. Just, the statute of the penal code and what form you put it on.
And the type of report. So, and everything for us back then, it was all handwritten.
All on, the 3 carbon papered reports and stuff like that.
The OI, the continuation, and
Property.
the property one.
And let's not forget the modus operandi.
Yeah, the MO. Yeah. Talk about antiquated. But we kind of covered everything in those 3-4 pages, right?
And depending on how much stuff, your OI could have been 7-8 pages. You had a lot of property in.
Yeah, a lot of writing. All right, so the county said, yes, you're in. You decide to come here.
Mm-hmm.
How did the trip go? What happened there?
What do you mean by trip?
Your family.
It started out as going to be a family move, but I'm the only one that made it to Florida. Things happen in a relationship.
Yeah.
And they went south. And I decided if my kids were going to have any kind of future, it was going to be here. And if I was ever going to be able to leave them anything, it was going to be from here, not from there. Because even at the time in 90, the prices of houses were outrageous compared to the salaries.
Right.
I left there making $42,000 a year, but after federal tax, city tax, paying into your pension, this tax, that tax.
State income tax.
I went from making 42 there to 26 here when I started. And it was only a difference of $200 take-home pay difference.
Yeah, because all the taxes up there, the cost of living.
Yep.
Right.
And on a lot less pay.
Right. Okay. You graduate our academy, and academies are similar. You're going through all the schooling, you're going through all the physical fitness and the running and the push-ups and the inspections.
No, I was in the best shape of my life.
Yeah, yeah. So you got to do it twice, right? When I went through the academy, by the end of the academy, we were running 5 miles without barely breathing hard, right?
Yep.
Doing one-handed push-ups, all that kind of stuff.
I wouldn't say that, but doing push-ups, yeah, and you weren't dying anymore.
Clarence Coffey was one of the guys, that would come out and run with us and stuff. And at the training bureau, when it was this big, right, right, the trailer for firearms, the cheeky, and the ranges, right. There was nothing else out there. It was a challenge. We had, because Clarence Coffey, big biceps, and
very athletic,
and he could do push-ups all day long. So then, of course, we had to compete with him.
Or try to.
Yeah, right, exactly. So you do get in the best shape of your life. And then after that, when you start working for a living, right?
Shift work
and all that, and you can't keep that level of physical fitness up, and it happens to all of us, I said, like in the first episode with Carlos, since he and I went to the academy together, even the guys that were in the military before they came on the job and went to the academy, their level of fitness wasn't what it was in the military, because you can't sustain that. Right? If you're in the military, and especially in special forces, you got to train all the time, right? But if you're not, you can't train all the time, right? You're doing your job.
Life gets in the way.
Yeah, life gets in the way. Okay, so now you're here. What was your first assignment upon graduating the academy?
Again, I asked to go to, they give you the wish list.
Right.
So I asked to stay in the North End, and I got assigned to Central District, good old North Side.
Yeah.
So, and it was like Harlem, only in flat instead of up.
Yeah, yeah, and more spread out. So your RMP became a green and white.
That's correct.
And now you had to travel. You had to drive to get to places.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, a little bit more distances, but traffic is traffic, and turning on the lights and sirens and going down one-way streets the wrong way. Yeah. Just in a different car.
In Central District, for those. Historically has always been our smallest district.
Yes, it was.
And as you came south to where I came, Station 5, Southwest District, was called the Ponderosa, like a bonanza, because it was so big, and went south and went all the way far west to Collier County. And then South District, where BJ, my son, is a sergeant now, South District's bigger than the state of Rhode Island. So, if you're way out in the southwest area and you need help, you're SOL.
And it was bigger before hammocks.
Yeah. Yeah, still. Okay, so you're here now, you're working North Side. What did you think about the style of policing now as compared to what you were doing before?
Well, after the FTO phases and you're on your own. Now it's it. You're on your own. You're on your own. You don't have that partner sitting next to you, 8 hours a day plus. And so you have to be more on your toes. Realize that you're not invincible, and you got to wait for your 15. I mean, there's some things that you can't wait on, but you got to remember, you are flesh and blood.
Yeah.
And you do more when you have a good, steady partner. You'll take a little bit more of a risk, or a little bit more of a chance, or you'll stick your nose into more stuff than if you're by yourself. Because then, like I said, again, if you're smart, you wait, because the idea is to go home at the end of the day.
No matter what police department you work for, you got to go home at the end of your shift.
Yeah, people at home love you, waiting for you to come home.
Yeah, yeah. Well, even if you're single and you don't have anybody, it doesn't matter.
Still, mom and dad, they want you to come home too.
Yeah, yeah. Number one priority is to make it to the end of the shift. Okay, so you were here, and what couple of assignments did you have besides uniform and central? What else did you do?
After Andrew, December of '92, I was voluntold to go down the Cutler Ridge for a good old 6 months. And I had never been south of Flagler Street before going down to Cutler Ridge after Andrew. And that was a whole new experience, too.
Yeah.
You get a whole new respect for Mother Nature.
South end of the county is huge. It's spread out. And it takes a long time to get to places.
Yeah, never mind trees in the way, signs down, no landmarks. What used to be here is now across the street in pieces there.
For anybody that may be joining us, when he mentions Andrew, he's talking about Hurricane Andrew in August of 1992 that decimated the south end of our county.
Never seen anything like it.
We were not prepared for.
I had never seen anything. I saw burned out buildings in Brooklyn. I never saw anything compared to what Mother Nature did with Andrew in South Dade County.
Yeah. It was eye-opening, to say the least. Shocking is more appropriate. What we learned after that, and we changed completely the way we respond to these things or get prepared for them in the first place.
And building codes were changed because of...
Yeah, country walk. Matchsticks, and you come from New York. Corruption in city government is, rampant. And we had our own version of it. I always said, politicians in New York, politicians here, city workers in New York, county workers here, or city workers, city of Miami, whatever. I said the only difference in our corruption from the Northeast or Chicago or something like that is our drinks have little umbrellas in them. Okay? Because a corrupt politician is a corrupt politician no matter what. And the paid off building inspectors that built all those houses down south that Andrew revealed that nothing was up to code, right? They needed to cut corners and they were getting paid.
Very little, yeah.
Yeah, no, it was terrible. It was absolutely terrible. But that was an eye-opening experience for us. So you were here less than 2 years when that happened. Right. Okay. What other assignments did you have besides your time down in South District?
Well, besides the 6 months, I went back to Northside District and I became an FTO. And I stayed there until from 93 to 98 as an FTO, as an auto theft investigator. And then in 98, I went to vehicle research, which was, the county's accounting for all the cars that got towed in. We accounted for all of that. We made sure the tow companies abided by the county contract.
Another corrupt enterprise.
Well, I want to say we did the best that we could and make sure the companies that worked for us stayed up on their toes the best that we
Right.
could. Did inspections every now and then. But also part of the job was to identify cars that were burned or do the best we could that were burned, submerged, had identification numbers taken off so you couldn't determine if it was stolen or not. And that's where my background in auto theft investigations came in handy for me. I stayed there until 2005 when I got promoted, and then I went back to good old Northside as a sergeant.
Okay, so let's talk about the decision to become sergeant. What pushed you towards that?
Seeing how some sergeants were not up to par, let's put it that way, and I thought to myself I could do this better. So I took the test. I barely made it before my list expired, and I went back to Northside as a supervisor.
Okay, so that was your first assignment as a sergeant. How did you find now being a sergeant as opposed to being an officer, the differences and some of the things you enjoyed or some of the difficulties you had?
Well, you weren't one of the guys anymore. Now you were responsible for one of the the guys you used to work with.
Right.
And some of them that were still there after the hiatus I took at vehicle research. Some remembered, some worked for me, but I got a brand new, again, rookie sergeant, rookie squad. It was very different. You went from just handling calls and doing your reports, and you go home at the end of the day, and your job is pretty much done unless you had an arrest or an off-duty assignment,
right,
or an overtime detail. So now you take on the responsibility, the kids you never wanted.
And some of them are really great.
And some of them are really bad.
Yeah.
So, of course, the bad ones always made you do more work, but you also learned from them, too.
Well, yeah, you learn from everybody you work with, no matter what level.
Good, bad, or indifferent.
Exactly. And the term only applies to those of us that made supervisory nightmare, right?
We've all had them.
We've all had them. Yeah. We're going to fast forward a little bit to Intracoastal. When did you go to Intracoastal?
In 2000, March of 2008, okay. I went there from communications.
And then in August of 10, I landed there. I was, like I said, in the dungeon at crime scene. I didn't have an investigative squad in crime scene. I had the forensic imaging unit, meaning we had all the mug shots, we had the forensic photographers, and the 2 forensic artists. And any police department in Dade County, or any other police department that needed mug shots from the system, we archived all the mug shots for all of Dade County, all the agencies. So I had 2 clerks that did all that, handled it beautifully. The photographers were great. The 2 artists were fantastic. These were civilian employees that I had. But I went to crime scene got myself kicked out of the port after my major.
It happens.
Yeah. Had my career developed once again.
There you go. Career development path.
Exactly. So I said, enough of this. There was some things changing, and we went under the lab, the crime lab, that a civilian commander. Our major retired, and we were in such a budget crunch at the time, they were combining units, so crime scene didn't have a major anymore. We had a captain, but it was melded with crime lab under the civilian commander. A lot of you may agree. I know you will. Civilians should never be commanders for cops. You don't know our personalities, our mindset, the way we do things. You just can't. It's apples and oranges.
2 different animals.
Yeah. So I asked for a transfer. And several options came up, but Intracoastal came up. And I told my lieutenant, and I got along great with my lieutenant, great guy. I want to go someplace I've never been. I'd worked a bunch of districts already. So let me go to Intracoastal. Northeast part of the county, the furthest away from my house, right? Right? Tucked in the armpit of the county, as we called it, right?
Yeah, because they were doing you a favor.
Well, I could have gone someplace else, but this came up, and I chose that. So then I land in Intracoastal, and I have the day shift, 8 to 4, Sunday, Monday off. Because I was a fairly senior sergeant by that point, that I was able to, that's the squad that was open, but I got it, and I was able to maintain what I wanted with good days off and everything. But then that's when you and I met.
On the day shift.
On the day shift. And we started to get to know each other. And you were more strict than I was with paperwork. And I remember, one of the things that Gilligan doesn't want us wearing our hat in the station. I'm guessing that came from New York.
Yeah, you always took your hat off when you went into the house.
Right. But when I say hat, I'm talking about ball cap. We didn't wear the 8-pointer hat. We didn't have that you guys were required to wear on the street in New York.
Mm-hmm. But then, took it off when we got in the house.
When you got in the house, right. Station house, right?
Got it.
The old term, right? We say the station, and you say the station house for the house, right? But we started to get to know each other and realized, okay, you're from New York. I grew up in New York. And we had a lot of parallels in our lives. And during the break, when you were showing me your yearbook, your senior year high school girlfriend was 2 years behind you, and so was mine, right? They were sophomores while we were seniors, so that's something else that we have in common. But then all the stuff, growing up in that culture up there, we have that in common, where I didn't have that with anybody else here, after I moved to Miami in 1980. Yes, there's other guys that transplanted, came down here from New York and Boston and those areas. I worked with a guy who was from the Philly area. Huckstein is from Pittsburgh, So the Northeast mentality is more or less what we have. But the good thing about the Northeast mentality is that you're supposed to be like this.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah, it was more like that up north because from the beginning of the day into the locker room where you change, you put your uniforms on together, to the end of the day when you come back and you take your uniforms off and you go home at the end of the night, or you go to choir practice or wherever it is you went. It was a little tighter knit than when I found out here.
And you also had all the cop bars or the firefighter bars and things like that where you mentioned choir practice. Our choir practices were behind the stations, right? We're in uniform, since we could go back and forth to work in uniform. We didn't have take-home cars until the late 80s for South District that did the pilot program. And then in 93 is when I got my first take-home car. And that killed the choir practices after work because you didn't want to be a little DUI, driving home in your green and white.
Yeah, but that didn't stop some people.
Well, we can do a whole episode on just that, right? I mean, cops and alcohol, right? So we get to know each other, and we realize that we're a lot more alike than we are different. And one of the things that I remember, our lieutenant, Eric Rossman, got so frustrated with us because we were alike.
We were as much alike.
And we were doing things very similar. We handled our squads very similarly. We handled the stuff on the road very similarly. And we also pushed back together against Eric because
what we thought was wrong, we spoke up about.
And with Eric, we had to push back, right? Big heart, nice guy, but Eric, sometimes, man, you just pissed me off. God, and then at Field Force training as instructors, no, Eric, we're not doing it your way. The whole committee's doing it this way. Come on. But I remember when he finally said, "Oh, you guys are too much alike. Just go handle your stuff." But
we got stuff done.
We got stuff done. Exactly.
And when something needed to be done, who did he look at? Who did he search out?
Right. Yeah, our squads were running really well, and we worked with other good people. Dago, right? Dago Perez.
Yep.
Same mentality. Do things the right way.
Yep.
Get it done. And if you needed help, or I needed help, or his squad needed help, then we just go.
We just got the job done, no matter who it took.
Not, I got calls holding in my area. Well, guess what? Now, this is one of those few times I'm gonna use colorful language during the podcast because I don't want it to be all the time like the way we speak at work. It's the same fucking district, okay? The call, if it's in the south end of the district, north, it's got to get handled. And if my guys are tied up and yours are available and it's an emergency or a priority, then your guys got to go or my guys got to go.
And the patch did say Dade County.
Exactly. Not, this stuff. Or if Northside needed help, right? No, we're not crossing 7th Avenue. What kind of crap is that?
Well, that's just all it was. And some people just didn't want the responsibility.
Well, and I also, and this is what I wanted to get into, supervision. Some of the style of supervision, but we're supposed to work together. This is not your squad exclusively or your part of the house, or this is my part of the house. We're supposed to do all this together. If something big were to happen, the entire district responds. Right? Suppose an officer got hurt, right? Because it's up in my area, your squad's not coming, and vice versa?
Not when I worked.
No, it shouldn't be that way. But we know we've worked with some really lazy supervisors that spent their days in the station, right? Playing on the computer, doing whatever they were doing. Right?
And don't get me wrong, there were some days where we needed to be on the computer or doing reports, evals, whatever. And there are a couple times where I spent a good 8 hours in the station too. Not every day though.
Yeah.
But.
We spent too much time doing paperwork, unnecessary paperwork.
Repetitive.
Yeah. Especially after October 24th, 2016. A date in Intracoastal that will live in infamy.
Oh.
ARC.
Oh. Well, yeah, that's not part of history that I want to remember, but yeah, that's why the date took me for a minute there.
Yeah, now you remember. When we got a new station commander after I was retired, and this guy came in and just inundated us with all these extra reports and everything.
Yeah.
That we sergeants, especially the young sergeants, were spending 4 and 5 hours per shift in the station trying to get these traces done for this guy because he only lived on paper. He was never a real cop. And if you want to know his name, write to my website or my email, which I'll give you at the end, and I'll give you his name. Whereas you can't do that. A sergeant's supposed to be out on the street with his or her squad because some shit's going to happen and they need to be there. And then the first thing that comes down the pipe when something happens, where's the sergeant? Right?
Why isn't he doing what he needs to be doing and directing traffic out there?
Right. And directing traffic in the sense of managing the scene or whatever it was. No, because we're in the station doing these stupid ass traces that don't allow us because this paperwork, okay, is more important than policing out on the street.
Well, in a previous conversation before the show started, I mentioned you mentioned about the nitpicking, and like I've said, when there's nothing important to be concerned about, the unimportant becomes important.
Perfect saying, right? I never understood, and I didn't subscribe to this mentality. There is no such thing as a paperwork emergency. When we need that memo, we need whatever the report was. Somebody wrecks a car, right? So one of our officers dinged the car.
It happened almost on a daily basis.
All the time, right? It's going to happen in police work. We're going to wreck cars. I've been in 7 crashes in my career. 2 may have been my fault. Okay. Shit happens, right?
Yeah, it does.
When you're out on the road that long, driving the way we drive, doing the things we do, driving down I never got in a crash on the wrong side of the street running lights and sirens, but just get your head up your ass for a minute or something and something happens. Okay, it's a tool. The car will get fixed, right?
Or replaced.
Or replaced if it's that bad. If you're one of those that just wrecks the car all the time, you need remedial training, no question about it, right? But if you ding it once in a while, so what? But that crash memo, right? Well, we need it before you go home. So now it's your Friday night or Friday afternoon, right, before you're going home. You got to get this in. No one's going to see it until Monday or Tuesday.
Precisely.
But you got to get it done. You're going to get overtime. And then the bitch is going to come about, too much overtime, right? In some cases, especially when we had
catch-22
budget crunches. Yeah, exactly. So you ding the car. So what? Well, it was your fault. Okay, all right. You're going to get a record of counseling. You're going to go to driver improvement school. In 1984, I became a driving instructor for the department. My FTO, my second FTO, Al Goodall, was one of the head instructors that taught us to be driving instructors. And I took the course under him and Sergeant Bucky Green, who was the head instructor. Later on, I crashed my unmarked car. I was in the crime suppression team in Southwest District during the holidays. And there was a hit and run with somebody hitting a parking lot, a child or something like that. And I was hauling ass. It was in the rain. I skidded. I hit the back of this car. My fault. All right. So they're sending me to dip school, right? Okay. I go to dip school. I get over there. The new head instructor of dip school at the college, where the driving course was in my instructor class as a student with me, right? We became driving instructors together. He's from the city of Miami. And he says, "What are you doing here?" I rear-ended a guy, running the 3 in an unmarked car or whatever. He goes, "Okay, we'll just do the class." We had the classroom, and then we had the practical driving exam, right? Where you go through the course. So he put me through the course, and he goes, "All right, you're done. Take half the class and recertify half the class," right? Because he knew, I was a good driver, right? Just shit happens. You do it this long, or something, on the road in those kind of circumstances.
Eventually things are going to happen.
Things are going to happen, right? So the idea that you wrecked or whatever, or paperwork, is so asinine to me. Yes, we'll get the paperwork done, but especially our favorite, a use of force report, right? It's going to be rejected 3 times.
Easy.
Because it's going to go from us, the sergeant, to the lieutenant. And then lieutenant, depending on what lieutenant you have, they're a Shakespearean scholar that is going to reject your report because they write better than you. Not all the time, not necessarily. I mean, just good because you go up in rank doesn't mean you're all knowing and all seeing. But okay, that's the way it's set up. They reject it. This, that, the other, change this. Then it goes to the administrative lieutenant, and that guy's an English scholar, and he rejects it. It comes all the way back down to the sergeant, and then it goes up, and then it goes to the captain. And then the captain rejects it. It goes all the way back down to the sergeant, right? And at the time, remember when we had the floppy disks in the computers?
Yes.
We turned that in with the report. Theoretically, that the secretary for the captain can just change whatever the captain wants. Theoretically. But no, right? Comes all the way back down. This happened so much in Northside when I was there. I rallied the other sergeants on day shift. I was the troublemaker, all right? And we went to the lieutenant and said, enough of this bullshit. You reject it. The admin lieutenant that doesn't like you when you guys worked in GIU together, okay, rejects your stuff. And then the captain gets it and rejects it again. And we're spending hours doing all this stuff. We need to stop this. We want a meeting with the captain. Said, we're giving you discs, okay? So if it's a spelling or a grammar stuff, why the hell do we need to see that again? There were 6 secretaries in Northside Station. Why is it coming back to the sergeant that should be on the road with his or her officers, right?
You're correct.
So we had a meeting with Captain Press, and he said, you're right. We're going to stop this. All the little minor stuff, we're not going to reject it back to the sergeant. We'll just have the secretary change it and the report go through. Finally, this paperwork thing that we're so bogged down with is what drove me mad more than anything in our jobs as sergeants. It was the paperwork, the evaluations and all that stuff. All right. Little rant, but
you see, I got to see it from both sides.
Right. We'll talk about that as soon as we come back. We're going to take another hard break. We'll be back with Sergeant Gilligan in just a minute. Welcome back. We're here with Sergeant Tom Gilligan, one of my best good friends. And we're into being sergeants and supervisors and that. So since you've had the opportunity to work in two major police departments, of course, the major, New York City, the biggest in the country, and then Miami-Dade. What is your take on the differences in command, the way that worked here compared to New York or vice versa?
In New York, we never saw. We never interacted. You dealt with your sergeant. That was pretty much it, or the desk lieutenant who was working. But the individuals, which was mostly the captains, because they wore the white shirts, we never saw them. I don't ever remember talking to one in the 6 years plus that I was out on the road there. Never got called to an office to speak to a captain. So, one of the things from the academy, and one of the very first instructors we had says, if you can go your entire career without somebody knowing your name, you did one hell of a job. And that's pretty much what it was like there. I mean, if they appeared, they were on a day shift. So if you worked afternoons or midnights, you never saw them. Very rarely did we even see our detectives unless you needed to call them out.
Really?
Yeah.
So there was, kind of like depicted on TV, there was that much of a separation between uniform patrol, detectives, and then command.
Yeah, I mean, like here, you'd run into GIU or auto theft, or they would show up on your scenes of stealing, stuff like that.
Well, we worked together every day.
Right, but not so much up there. The detectives didn't come and, show up on your scene unless they needed to, or you called them. It was not like, they're right around the corner, they're going to take a 15 with you. It just wasn't like that. And you never saw, whoever was in charge, they wouldn't be running around and show up on a call.
Wow. I was always glad that we never had a detective rank.
Up there they did.
Right. And if you transferred to an investigative unit, let's say homicide, robbery, sexual battery, narcotics, whatever it is, general investigations inside the districts. If you were an officer, your silver badge was still your silver badge as a detective. It just called you detective, but there was no rank as detective. Because there was already enough of a separation, because GIU was always upstairs in the station, uniform is downstairs, and that created that separation and sometimes a little strife, depending on the personality of the individual, of course, right? That you're in GIU now or you're in robbery, that you think you're better than a uniformed patrol officer. We never allowed that. You're a silver badge, or I'm a sergeant in uniform and you're a sergeant in homicide. You're just a sergeant, okay? And you can't talk to me any way you think that you want to, or because you're a homicide sergeant. Your job is different, but you're still sergeant. And we don't call them detective sergeant. You're just sergeant in homicide, right? Guys that go into investigations, we give them the courtesy of calling them detective, right? And I'm glad that we always did it that way. So in our stations, in our way of doing things, and I think it's pretty much the way Florida does it, especially South Florida, you basically saw your lieutenant almost every day as the platoon commander, right? And you saw all the other sergeants, you interacted with all the other sergeants if you were an officer. And we sergeants, of course, interacted with the lieutenants in the station, whether it was a uniformed lieutenant or a general investigations lieutenant or the neighborhood resource lieutenant. And we also interacted with our captains and our majors. What I thought was so cool when I was a rookie officer at Station 5, our major was Kermit Russell. He had a little notepad that would say, from the desk of Kermit Russell. Worked afternoons. We make a big grab. We're involved in some caper, and then it goes on the incident log. So the next morning, the major sees it's some noteworthy occurrence. And you'd come into work the next day, and there was a note in your mailbox, handwritten by him, from the desk of Kermit Russell, saying, "Great job last night, Bird or Tom or whatever. Good grab on the burglary subjects or whatever." And I thought that was so cool because he was paying attention to what we were doing.
To what you were doing, yeah.
Right. So majors ran our districts, captains were executive officers, but there was a time where it was just captains running the districts. So in New York, captains run the precincts.
I remember, yeah.
Yeah, I think it may still be that way. And then above captain is what?
Bird, I
Inspector?
can't tell you.
Yeah.
I totally forgot.
And then for us, it's division chief, that the majors answer to, uniform or whatever the specialty is. But at least, you got to interact. Now, if you had a bad commander or a bad captain, the last thing you wanted to see them is in your roll call, right? You want your sergeant to do roll call and get out of the station or whatever. And I've always said that the district commander that affects everybody can either affect them in a very positive way or a very negative way. We've experienced both. So you guys up there never saw your captain.
It was like a Bigfoot sighting.
Right.
I mean, I can't say when I worked out in Harlem that I ever had to interact with the captain. Only one time out in Queens when I had made Officer of the Month at the ceremony did I even speak to the captain. He took a couple of pictures with me. And it was like, I have no idea who this guy is. I mean, I've seen him around the station, but we didn't know each other.
Right.
Not like, you talk to Major Placencia, you would talk to her in the hallway and just shoot the shit or whatever.
Right.
Or talk to your lieutenants or the GIU lieutenant. You knew your familiarity with each other because you saw each other in the building. Patrol up north, you never went up on the second floor where PD, police detective unit, and the majors or the captain's office was, and you never went up there. It was basically more like, if you don't need to be here, you shouldn't be here. You went up to PDU and you saw the detectives if you brought something in and they needed to talk to you about, then it's okay for you to be up on the second floor. Other than that, you had no business being up on the second floor. Just like some desk officers. What are you doing in the station? Use the bathroom. Okay, make it quick. You don't belong in here. You belong out there.
Wow.
Unlike, some people, made it a habit of going back to the station to use the bathroom every half hour. Here.
Well, on that note, I am not going to hold that against them because I, from early on, would not use a public restroom if I had to sit down and think about it, right? I went to the station, or at the time, my mother's house was in one of our patrol areas, and I'd go to her house. I am not going to use one of those nasty bathrooms, other, if I
I
really
know
had
what you
to,
mean.
right?
I've been in those bathrooms. Yeah, I know what you mean.
Speaking of supervision, I'll just touch on this for a second. We had a lieutenant at Station 5. Asshole. I was on a crime prevention unit, uniform hotspot squad, and we had 4 areas within the district, within Southwest District, 4 patrol areas. He would make our sergeant assign us to an area within one of those patrol areas. So let's say it's Area 2 today. We had a more restricted area within that, and he decided to add that we couldn't eat outside of that area or use the bathroom outside of that area. So, okay. I'm going to be the asshole again, right? This is when I was an officer. This is what got me in a little bit of trouble, and later on, at some other point, we'll talk about how I got the nickname Maverick. We had to have a meeting with the sergeant and say, you know what, Sarge, that ain't going to happen. I am not going to go sit down in a nasty ass bathroom in a gas station or even a McDonald's for that matter, right? I'm going to come to the station, or I'm going to go to my mother's house, right? Because I lived a little too far away from the patrol area. Said it's not going to happen. So you can go tell the lieutenant, not going to happen. And if he doesn't get on board with that, and we're not asking, something huge here, we'll go to the PBA, we'll file a grievance. All right. You're not going to tell me where I have to go to the bathroom. But this is one of those types of personalities that we all experience, right?
Yes.
Okay. NYPD's on TV all the time in some form or fashion, especially in the TV shows and movies and all that. But I never liked that separation between patrol and detective bureau. I didn't care for it because they always depict them as the detectives talking down to the patrol officers. And you go pull the traffic cams over there now, or, you go take care of this or look in the dumpsters or whatever. And it's like, really? You're the detective. Go and detect. Right? Okay? Our homicide guys respond as a squad, not 2 guys responding to handle a homicide. They respond as a squad. And then crime scene comes out, and they're the ones doing the dumpster diving and all that, because my brother did that for 23 of his 30 years. So I just found it, the way some treat others, and I couldn't cope with that. I didn't like it.
Yeah. Only when I came here did I know any different.
Yeah.
Because that's all I knew up there. It's just the way it was. Is, if you didn't have any business being up on the second floor in the detective's office, or it's not like you went out there and hung out and hadn't shot the shit. It's, you belong out on the road. I mean, that's what you're getting paid for the most part.
Right.
If you're in there with a call where they had to respond or you needed their assistance, that's one thing. But you weren't in there, grab assing or anything like that, or, did you see the latest episode of A, B, C, or D? It wasn't like that. No, you got your ass right back out.
We interact with the detectives all the time, the way we do things, because if you're a uniform officer and you catch a burglar, detectives are going to respond, and then you're going to be transporting back to the station so they can do the interviews and do their paperwork while you do your paperwork, and you're there sitting at the detectives' desks with them. We didn't have that separation. For the most part, we got along a lot better, and, we played nice in the sandbox together.
I guess if you want to call it that, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, for the folks a lot of us have been told during our careers, hey, with everything you've seen and done, you should write a book. So I did. And there it is. The real greatest show on earth. I'll ask you, of course, to buy the book, but if you are a civilian, you're a politician, you're in the media, or you're a young officer, this is a how-to guide for what policing is really like in America, all right? This is the unfiltered truth, the good, the bad, the ugly of our profession. So what I did is I told my stories throughout the book on a variety of topics, but to lend legitimacy to what I was telling you about my stories and my career, because I am not unique in this. We're all the same. All the cops are the same everywhere we are. I've asked others to contribute to the book and write about some significant story or event that happened to them during their career. Tom graciously wrote a story for the book, one of his experiences that you'll find in the back of the book with all the other officers, family and friends, called Stories from the Fringe. And these are their stories of what happened to them. And Tom provided one from his time at NYPD. So, what happened there?
So I'll just refer back to the book. My memory isn't what it used to be. First week of September '90. It's a day, an afternoon shift, and we're down at roll call. And
What precinct?
The 104. This is my precinct out in Queens. And our sergeant Jimmy Otto, he's reading a bolo about black male in a car doing purse snatches along a certain corridor in our precinct. Dark two-door car occupied black male that had done several purse snatches on Cooper Avenue between Cypress Hill Street and 69th Street during the day shift. So me and my partner, after we loaded up, we were proactive. So we said, let's roll on over there. So after we loaded up and roll call was about 15, 20 minutes, so we figured this was someplace between 4:30 and 5 o'clock. So we drove down off to Cooper Avenue, and we're going in one direction, and we're keeping an eye out, and, because it ran along, that street ran along a big perimeter of the cemetery we had, and apartment houses on the other side. So we're driving, and then lo and behold, what's coming our way? And both me and Johnny did this. And Johnny flipped the U-turn, and it was on.
Holy shit, that's the car.
That's the car, and that's the guy. So he made a U-turn, and we get in behind him. Johnny didn't light him up because we kind of waited to see what we had in front of us. And he didn't notice we were behind him. So he rolled up to a red light. And I told Johnny to pull up alongside of him. He did. So I hung out the passenger side because I was a passenger that day. I was a recorder, which meant I got to write the reports while Johnny drove.
The recorder. And
Johnny drove, and depending on partners, you would either, drive all shift or you'd flip it up. He'd drive the first half, I'd drive the second half. So he rolled right up to the car, and I stuck out the passenger side with my good old 38, and I pointed it right at him. And it's like, he didn't expect us to be there. He really didn't. So I'm starting to give him verbal commands about what to do. He put his hands up, the whole works, and I'm looking, the light hadn't turned yet. So I'm talking, and I'm thinking in the back of my head, please don't move. Just listen to what I'm telling you. So he's putting him up. I'm telling him to turn the car off with his left hand, and he reaches over. He looks up and saw the green light. I said, oh, fuck. And then the chase is on because people started up at the green light.
So you were doing a felony stop right next to
Oh, yeah. I mean, they didn't train us to do stuff like that. Right. Everything was improvised, right. At least back then. Could I gotten my ass shot? Sure, I could have. But that's not what's going through your mind. So like I said, the chase was on. He did his best to try and lose us, and Johnny was a hell of a driver. And so we find our way onto Wyckoff Avenue, which runs in the Brooklyn precinct that we bordered. So he pulls into a supermarket parking lot, which is Wallbaum's, which I don't even think they exist anymore. And he tries to lose us in the parking lot of the supermarket. So he tries to make it out one end, and Johnny cuts him off. So he wasn't going to let us get around him. So Johnny cut him off, and he sees that he can go forward, so he tried to go reverse. He reverses, he tries to go through the fence. He didn't make it, because he didn't try to go through the fence where it was just a chain link. He hit the pole that holds up the chain link. So he bent the shit out of the pole, and the car was hung up, and the engine stalled on him. So with that, we got out and we run up to the car, guns drawn, the whole works, screaming at him, and he's trying to get this car started. And son of a bitch got it started. And we were about 6 feet off by that point, but we had gotten close. And he just came straight at us. I didn't have a whole heck of a lot of room because I was closest to the chain link fence. And thank God there were no cars and the parking spots were empty. I backpedaled and I fell backwards because I hit a patch of oil that was in one of the parking spots. And I went down. And Johnny just saw the car go by him and didn't see me. The guy flipped a U-turn to go back out the other side because our car was in the way. And Johnny started shooting back then because Johnny thought he killed me. And then I got back up on my feet, and that's the first and only time I ever used my firearm in the line of duty. What happened? He just kept going. Did we ever hit him? I have no clue. But after all was said and done, there was a fire engine in the parking lot. The fire crew was doing the shopping for the firehouse. And they came over, and we saw the whole thing. You guys okay? And so with that, we asked them to hang out, and we found a couple other people came over and said they saw what happened, and we called our sergeant, and then the dog and pony show starts. And it didn't turn out to be as bad as I thought. He asked us what happened. We had to wait to talk to internal review and give him our side of what happened, because we did fire our guns. Right. And that was pretty much the end of it. And that was a heck of a way. That took up most of our shift, even though this started at about 5-ish. So by the time it was all said and done, and talking to the sergeant, talking to IA, the shift was over. We came back the next day for our next shift, which was our Friday also. And we found out that the car was found in Brooklyn, in the next precinct. No subject. We never found out if we hit him or not, or if there were any holes in the car. We weren't told that. But then we went on our days off. When we came back, we found out that didn't stop him, because he was right back at it the next day on what would have been our first day off. Right. And guys got up on him again, and then, of course, the car chase was on. And we had a lot of cemeteries in the 104th precinct. So he tried to escape. He lost it, and he crashed into the front gate of one of the cemeteries. And he ran into the cemetery to try and elude our guys. And as I said earlier, I'll mention aviation. See, we didn't do perimeters. We didn't call out aviation. There was nothing like that back then. This is the one and only time in my 6+ years out on the road that I see New York City Police Department aviation unit. I was told they came out. I didn't see it. But with the helicopter and the guys on the ground, they got them on our days off. Now, what they charged him with, and I haven't the slightest idea, because like I said, it was September. It was early part of September, and I left that very same month to come down here. Never got called back to testify or anything else, so I have no idea whatever happened to him.
So you're not aware if they actually filed any charges for the assault on you?
I haven't the slightest, no.
Wow.
We didn't write the report that night because we were involved, so I never ever got to saw what they wrote it up as either.
Yeah, well, you discharged your firearm, so
yeah,
somebody else had to write it.
Yeah. Did
the sergeant have to do a use of force type report because you discharged your firearm?
Not to my memory. We weren't involved like that at that point. Maybe they do now, or they did throughout the course, but from what I remember, it wasn't as involved as it was when I got here. But like I said, it took the rest of the shift talking to him and waiting for I-8 and to give us stories and give all the information to whoever was writing the report, and we went home that night. I mean, we didn't even get overtime.
Were you able to have a union rep there? I mean, your choice?
We might have. I can't say that I remember.
Okay. So that was, is that the closest you ever came?
To, yeah. Yeah, that's just about the closest.
Yeah.
It was scary. I mean, he got the car started at the very last second. We were, like I said, no more than 6 feet away from the car. He could have ran us both down if he was a better driver, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But it didn't happen. And then, on top of me going backwards, on top of the car coming here, it was a, an oh shit moment.
Yeah. Yeah, we all had close calls. But
yeah, Johnny, I thought he killed you. He was very happy. Boy, I'm so glad you're alive.
yeah, I can only imagine what he was thinking when he didn't see you and the car was going
Past
back.
him.
Yeah, exactly. You were under the car or something like that.
Could have easily been.
Well, obviously, we're glad that you're okay and you made it. But, for people that don't do our job, they only see this stuff on TV. They're not, they don't know how close we come on a daily basis sometimes. It could almost be daily that you're put in that situation where something happens and you just go, oh, shit, that was close.
Depending on where you work, that can be in almost an every shift situation.
Yeah. Well, okay. Well, thanks for contributing to the book always, and
My pleasure.
And for your friendship. So
That was a given too from the beginning.
folks, we're gonna pivot here. We're gonna start closing out the show, and we're gonna go over something that I started to include in the first episode. Part of our job, unfortunately, is that we're going to have colleagues that we lose on the job for a variety of reasons, both us and fire. So what I'd like to do is go over the list of our fallen comrades for both police and fire since our last episode on June 17th. And we're going to go over them. We're going to tell you who they are and what happened to them so we can honor them and their memories and their service to our country and our communities. So this is as of July 22nd, and I call this segment Never Forgotten. So we'll start with, and Tommy and I are both going to go over the list for everybody. So going back to June 23rd, Sergeant Chu L. Dang. He was in his 50s. I couldn't get his exact age. LAPD, 26 years. Sergeant Dang stopped to assist on a crash on the 405 and was struck in the rear. This is very common in our profession, getting hit while you're out on the highway.
It's happened a few times in Dade County too.
Yep.
June 27th, Under Sheriff Brandon Gade, 30 years old, Phillips County Sheriff's Office for 8 years. While arresting a subject for illegal fireworks, the subject pulled a gun and shot Gade. He was able to return fire and kill the subject. Under Sheriff Gade dies later on at the hospital.
June 29th, Officer Kendall Corder, 32 years old, Milwaukee PD, 6 years. Corder and his partner responded to a domestic violence call that was upgraded to shots fired. We know this happens all the time, and domestic violence calls the most dangerous call that police can respond to. When they exited their vehicle, they were ambushed and shot. This is very pervasive in our profession. Corder died 3 days later, and his partner survived.
June 30th, Officer Francisco Paul Flates, 48 years old. Cherokee County Sheriff's Office for 4 years, Murphy, North Carolina. Deputy Flates and his partner were transporting a federal inmate to a medical appointment. Inmate got a hold of Flates' gun and shot both deputies. Flates succumbed to his wounds, and his partner survived. Inmate was later apprehended.
July 1st, Deputy Devin Mason, 27 years old. That's young. Darlington County Sheriff's Office, unknown amount of years, as Darlington, South Carolina. Mason and his partner responded to a residence where the subject had outstanding warrants. Upon entering the residence, they were ambushed and both hit. Mason dies and his partner survives. The subject was killed by other responding deputies. Well, at least they got him.
July 2nd, Officer Miguel Cano, 34 years old. California Highway Patrol for 2 years in Culver City, California. Cano and his partner were transporting an arrestee when Cano said he didn't feel well. He lost control of the cruiser and crashed into a tree. Possible heart attack, not confirmed. Partner and subject had minor injuries.
Cardiovascular disease is something else that our profession suffer greatly with. Next one's yours too.
July 13th, former Officer Chase Childers, 38 years old, Cobb County PD for 3 years, Cobb County, Georgia. While at Pawley Island Beach, Childers saw 5 swimmers in distress from rip currents. He and another Samaritan rescued all 5. Childers was pulled away by the rip current and drowned. He was awarded a life-saving medal while working for Cobb County.
So you've probably seen this on the news. They just reported it this past week. He's a former officer for Cobb County. He was also a minor league baseball player, but he saw people in distress. And even though he was only on the job for a few years, his training and instinct kicked in, and he jumped in with another Samaritan and tried to rescue them. Unfortunately, he didn't make it. And then July 18th, and we know that you saw this on the news. Deputy Joshua Kelly Eklund, 19 years. Deputy Victor Lemus, 22 years. Deputy William Osborne, 33 years. Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. While transporting explosives at the department training facility after recovering them the day before the scene, an explosion occurred, killing all 3 deputies. The incident is under investigation as negligent homicide targeting the person who illegally stored the explosives. So last Thursday, when I was updating this list, Tommy and I spoke on the phone, and I told him the list, this is what we're going to do. And we both said that between last Thursday and today, hopefully we don't add any more names to the list. And then on Friday, the very next day, the 3 LA deputies were killed in that explosion. And then I also learned about former officer Chase Childers, who drowned. Just like that, from one day to the next, and we know this is going to happen again, and it's unfortunate, but that's the way our job goes. Our hearts go out to all the families and the comrades at each one of these police departments. Now let's do fire. Because fire and us, I'm going to go over Eddie. Fire and us, we're 2 sides of the same first responder coin. So we're going to honor the firefighters that we've lost. And it's amazing how many are lost in just a matter of a month or so. June 14th, firefighter Violet Caramella, 35 years old, Riceville Volunteer Fire Department, Asheville, North Carolina. Unfortunately, ATV crashed during training.
June 25th, Captain Michael Reedy, 38 years old, Roanoke Fire Department, Roanoke, Texas. After shift, he participated in a strenuous fitness activity. Within 24 hours, he was found unresponsive by his wife, possible heart attack.
Once again, cardiovascular disease for our 2 professions. June 29th, Battalion Chief John Morrison, 52 years old, from the this is hard to pronounce, Coeur d'Alene Fire Department in Idaho. He responded to a grass fire and was ambushed by gunfire. It's believed that the grass fire was set on purpose to draw in the firefighters.
Also that day, June 29th, Battalion Chief Frank Harwood, 42, Continuity Fire...
Kuntanai.
Okay, County Fire Department, Post Falls, Idaho, responded to that same grass fire as Chief Morrison was also killed by gunfire.
2 separate fire departments. These chiefs obviously worked together, and they responded to the same fire, and they were taken out by a sniper. It's absolutely horrible. June 29th, firefighter Lee M. Krause, 52, St. Louis Fire Department, St. Louis, Missouri. While on duty and after several calls, firefighter Krause suffered a fatal heart attack and passed away on July 1st. Once again, cardiovascular disease.
July 4th, Chief James G. Steek, 68, West Colesville Fire Department, Binghamton, New York. Arrived for work and stated he wasn't feeling well. He collapsed from a possible heart attack.
Another one. July 15th, firefighter Jonathan Ashworth, 23 years old, Beauregard Parish Fire District number 4, Volunteer Fire Department, DeRidder, Louisiana. Firefighter Ashworth was responding to a medical call in his personal vehicle. Remember, the volunteer guys a lot of times go to the calls and meet the truck there in their personal vehicles. He lost control and crashed, and unfortunately was pronounced at the scene.
July 17th, Assistant Chief Jason McClone, 51 years old, East Branch Fire Department, also volunteer, East Branch, New York. Assistant Chief McClone responded to a crash scene where he had to reposition a rig because of downed electrical wires. He didn't realize the wires were in contact with the rig when he touched it, and he was electrocuted. He was pronounced at the scene.
How many?
Unfortunately, 46 fallen year to date.
46 firefighters, due to various causes, died in the line of duty this year. And for us, for police, it's been 43. Now, I want to take a second and talk about a colleague of mine and Tom's. Tom didn't know him, but on Sunday evening, I learned that an old colleague of mine from Station 5 in the early 80s, in our early days, Eddie Orette, was in the hospital with leukemia. And it became a rather aggressive form of leukemia. Eddie retired 16 years ago and had enough of retirement for 3 months, and he went back to work. He went to our Midwest district, where he continued as a field training officer, and he's trained unknown number of rookie cops. During this last 6 months, he developed leukemia. He was on the job 54 years. I went yesterday morning to the hospital to see him. He was out of it. I couldn't talk to him because he was already on morphine. I met his wonderful daughter and his son, and a lot of colleagues from the Midwest District came in after I got there. I got to spend a little time with them. Unfortunately, Eddie and I couldn't talk. I left later on in the afternoon. My niece, Alina, who's a lieutenant with us, texted me the department announcement that Eddie had died. Just like that. I went to see him, and now he's gone. And others were planning on going to the hospital to see him, and they never got the opportunity. Just gone. It hit me because he was such a wonderful guy. We don't want this to happen to any of our people, but he was so dedicated to the job. He loved it. He loved training. He took care of the rookies. When I was a rookie, he was already there a couple of years, but he treated us like gold. The man was a gem. And gone, just like that. So may Eddie rest in peace, and our hearts go out to the family and all the colleagues of Miami-Dade Sheriff's Office now, but especially the officers in Midwest District that worked with him. So for us, on the police side, it's 43 that we've lost so far this year. It's not if, but when for us. And it's just something that we had to accept when we came on the job. So that's something that we want to do every day. Every episode is talk about who we've lost in that time frame, because it's always going to happen. Kind of a somber note, but I'm going to go back on a higher note here, kind of lift our spirits a little bit. And I'm going to ask out some closing questions for Tom that he doesn't know are coming. Okay, this is to get inside who Tom is, right? So, what is your favorite word?
Unfortunately, I use it way too often. Fuck.
Okay. That was one. What was your? So that's your favorite curse word?
Yeah. You
Okay.
ask my daughter, it's like every other word out of my mouth.
What turns you on spiritually or emotionally, if you do any of that, if you feel any of that?
When I think about my pets, my past pets, and the one that's got a short amount of time with us, that gets me.
Okay. What turns you off?
Stupid people.
Stupid people. But those stupid people kept us employed.
For a long time, and even have made overtime for us. That's correct.
A lot of overtime for us. So you said what your favorite curse word is. I think most of us would agree with that one. What sound or noise do you love?
Our national anthem.
Our national anthem. Yeah, that's kind of important, right? And not the kind where people are kneeling. Right. What sound or noise do you hate?
Taps, the one they play at officers' funerals. I hate it.
Firefighters
Beautiful
and
song, but I
military.
hate it.
Yeah. I have a echo version of taps on my playlist.
Amazing Grace.
But this one version of taps on my playlist when I'm in the truck or whatever and I'm listening to my playlist or wherever I'm listening to my playlist, it comes on. I never fast forward through it, or change it. I listen to it as a reminder of what we've lost. Where would you like to live if it's other than where you live now?
I love where I live. Definitely wouldn't go back to New York. Maybe an island where it's, not as hot all the time and a nice ocean breeze. My wife wants to go there, or Italy, one of the two, but I would join her at both.
Italy is not too bad, especially in Tuscany and the wine country out there.
Gorgeous.
Who's your favorite fictional hero? Fictional.
Fictional. That one's a tough one. I'd say Captain America would have to be a good one to look up to.
Okay. Not a bad
That's why I
choice.
enjoy the Marvel movies.
My favorite?
I can't see it.
Superman.
Take it you're going to go see the movie soon then.
Maybe. The problem with the movies is we know kids are talking on the phone and all that, but yes, I love Superman number one. What person or persons do you admire most?
I'd have to say the strong women in my life. That would be my mom, my Aunt Fran, and my wife.
Yeah, it's good. What profession other than your own would you like to attempt or have attempted?
Believe it or not, at the strike shortened '83 season, I tried out for the Mets.
Did
It was
you?
an open tryout at Shea Stadium. You got to take 6 swings at a pitch, run in the track, and timed you in the 40, and you got 3 throws from right field. 1 to second, 1 third, and 1 home. Nowhere's near any of the 3. And of my 6 swings, I got to hit 1 because I fouled off the other 5.
Okay.
And it was just a weak liner over to second base.
That's something you never told me. What profession would you not have attempted?
I don't mind chasing bad guys down a dark alley, but I would never, ever wanted to be a fireman. Never. I would rather see what's coming at me as opposed to the fire where you have no clue if the floor you're walking on is going to be there in the next second.
Right.
Especially from the walk-ups that I experienced in New York.
Yeah.
I never wanted their job.
Yeah, a lot of rickety old apartments. If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Come and have a seat. We've been waiting. There's plenty of company here for you. But unfortunately, I think I'm going to where all the fun people are going to be, and that's down in the basement.
Okay. All right, fair enough, right? Self-aware, right? Or no angels.
Oh, my daughter comes, I say, every night, we're going to hell. And I told her, that's where all the fun people are going to be.
That's good. Any last words for our audience?
No, I think we've said a lot in the time that we're here.
Yeah.
It's just that, for all you new guys, depend on one another, watch each other's back, and make sure you go home to the people you want to give a hug to every night.
100%. Thank you for being here.
My pleasure.
We're going to close out. A couple things I want to talk to you about that are important to me and my wife Rosie. We donate to these organizations, Tunnel to Towers Foundation. Absolutely one of the best. And if you haven't seen them on TV, turn the TV on and see what they're doing. They're giving homes, mortgage-free homes, first responder families, smart homes for our catastrophically injured military personnel. It is a wonderful organization. They're taking veterans off the street. So I urge you, the $11 a month is absolutely worth it. Get into it. Go to t2t.org. And no, I'm not sponsored by them or any of the people or organizations I'm talking about. I just find it important and I want to pass it along. St. Jude's Research Hospital. While nothing has happened to our family personally, I have very close friends where their child had to spend 10 months in St. Jude's. It's everything that you see on TV. Another wonderful organization to help take care of our children and the families that are stricken with cancer. I am a member of the advisory board for the Miami-Dade Regional Peer Support Team. This is an organization where first responders, police, and their families can reach out to us if they're struggling with any issue whatsoever. You make the phone call, get a hold of one of us. We're going to have someone call you and talk to you. We don't want you to do anything where, you always say it and it's always said wrong. Are you going to hurt yourself? We want to prevent you from killing yourself. Call us. The number is 754-315-7337 or 754-315-PEER, P-E-E-R, P-E-E-R. Please give us a call. Keeping in with that, the National Suicide Prevention Hotline, 800-273-8255 or just 988. You can call, you can text. It's confidential. Reach out. If you're struggling, talk to somebody. Give us a call. Call the National Suicide Hotline. All right? We don't want anything to happen to you or your family. Now, if you want to get a hold of the show, you want to email us, you have comments, questions, topic ideas, or want to be a guest on the show, go to my website, sergeantmaverick.com. That's sgtmaverick.com. And you can email us from there or sergeantmavspodcast@gmail.com. That's sgtmavspodcast@gmail.com. Please reach out. We would love to hear from you. Any opinions, even if you don't like police and you want to make a comment, we'll take your information and we'll talk about it on the show. So we want to thank you for being with us. Stay tuned for our next episode. Make sure to hit the like button and subscribe so you know when we have the next episode dropping. And like I like to say, that my favorite TV sergeant from that show Hill Street Blues, Sergeant Esterhaus, I'll leave you with this. Let's be careful out there. Take care.